as you go back about 150, 200 years and you see the US starting to rise as an economic power, where the established powers at that time are the US, there's of course Germany and other powers in Europe. What do you attribute the rise of the US to?
Well, a number of things. I mean, the United States was always singularly fortunate in many ways. One is the territory we occupy is the best geopolitical position on the globe, without a doubt. We face both the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. We have territory in the Arctic, the temperate and the tropical zones. We have everything from deserts to jungles and enormous agricultural productivity. But two things that really, I think, started the United States off. One was that in the 17th and 18th centuries, situations were often very bad in Europe, economically. And a lot of people sat around saying, oh dear, things are terrible, somebody's got to do something. But a small group of people said, I'm going to do something. And they sold all their goods, said goodbye to their friends, got on a rickety little boat across a vast ocean in order to improve themselves in a new world. And so the people who populated the United States were all born risk takers in order to improve their lot, which they did. And even by the end of the colonial era, the American colonies had the highest per capita income in the world. One example of this is that in the Revolutionary War, the soldiers of the Continental Army and the soldiers of the British Army were often very closely related. I mean, sometimes first cousins. And yet the soldiers in the Continental Army were averaged 2 inches taller than those in the British Army. And the only explanation for that is they were fed better as children. And so this country, has been rich almost ab initio. The other thing that really helped out, especially in the 19th century, was because the United States was essentially invulnerable from attack. If we were too far away, the only neighbors we have is Canada and Mexico, neither of which ever posed a threat to us. We actually, in 1812, we invaded Canada and we got our butts kicked. And so we had a very small military, both naval and army, and which meant we had very low taxes. So people could, instead of having to pay high taxes, they could use that money to invest in new entrepreneurial activities. And that's exactly what we did. And so, the rise of the United States economically, especially after the Civil War, in 1860, we imported all the steel that we used. We didn't make any steel in this country. By 1900, the United States was exporting steel to Britain and Germany, and doing so, our costs were so much lower that we could export them successfully to the two great steel powers of Europe.
Yeah. And so the entrepreneurial zeal and the entrepreneurial spirit, to start with, as you said, maybe just very well endowed ab initio. And then the fact that you were spending very little on defense and instead focusing purely on productive economic activity seem to be the three main things that you're attributing the rise of the US to.